so much of uncertainty and when there is so much unpredictability, one of the few things that we can definitely do is really setting our intentions and setting our motivations. And I feel that becomes something which all of us can start with. So while we are here, and it's a beautiful space that's being held by so many wonderful people, we recognize that none of us would really be here if it was not for our teachers, for all that we have learned. And, we're having today people from so many different traditions joining in. So really a moment to remember how much we've received from all of these teachers, enlightened beings who've helped us, who've carved out a path so that we don't get lost, so that we have a way. The second part of setting our motivation is really recognizing, we all live in little bubbles, right? We've got our 2, 4, 6, 8, whatever is your number of people that we connect with. And the more anchored we are, the more centered we are in some way, it's spreading benefit into this little bubble. And I feel through this bubble, we're also spreading it further and further. And if we can in some way hold on to that vast aspiration of saying we can bring benefit to so many sentient beings, just by taking care of self, that would be wonderful too. So really the whole purpose of any of these practices, just being to be better whoever we are, irrespective of our faiths and traditions. In 81, His Holiness in a talk with leaders from the Jewish community and Roman Catholic community had said, it's such a good thing to have so many religions, because there are very unique perspectives and techniques which they bring in. And that's a wonderful thing because people have so many different mental dispositions. So it's really with that spirit that we're offering this veritable buffet in some way of traditions such as Sikhism, Christianity, Hinduism, and Buddhism. And we hope it is with that spirit you take what is it that you feel will help you, what you feel is going to be of benefit. In terms of the structure, like Prashant had sent in the chat room earlier, what we're going to do is have all 4 of the speakers, after which we'll open it up to the Q&A session. So hopefully we'll get about 30 minutes at least for the Q&A. You all have probably already noticed that you cannot unmute yourself. But what we will do is during the Q&A session, since we are a little biased towards interaction, we'll request you to raise your hand. For those of you who are not familiar with Zoom, on the bottom somewhere right of the screen, you'll see this cute little emoji with a plus sign, which says reaction. And if you click on it, it gives you a raise hand option like this. So if you have a question in the Q&A, please raise your hand and we will send you the request to unmute, and that will enable you to do that. Alternately, you can use the chat box to type your question in, but however, we'll only be taking the questions at the end. Yes, any questions at this point of time, or is there some amount of clarity on the structure so far? Silence is always a good thing, or not. Okay. All right, so we'll take it as a good thing. Okay, so then without any further ado, shall we start, Prashant? Okay, lovely. So I'm very, very happy to introduce you to our first speaker, Avneet Kaur. We've sent formal introductions across, but I will introduce her a little bit. Avneet Kaur is a learner, a seeker, a psychologist, a life coach with over 15 years of experience with a whole range of programs. She's touched many, many lives. She's very active on YouTube and has co-founded the Game of Life Foundation, RAHAO, the School of Life, and participates in the Game of Life talks to spread her message to a wider audience. In terms of her training and educational experiences, besides geographically being trained in India, UK, and US, she's also studied in physics, education, and psychology. psychology, which helps her to combine her practical knowledge of science, psychology, and education to create learning for well being. Her conviction with regard to potential in every human being to excel beyond their imagination is very strong and forms the basis of her programs. Today, what she's going to actually share with us is really quite special. She's going to focus on three dimensions which facilitate healing: rag or music, which is a bridge between the outside noise and inner peace; seva or service, which is a bridge between healing the world to healing inside; and Shabad, which is wisdom, which is a bridge between resistance and acceptance. Over to you, Avneet. Really happy to have you with us.
Very good evening to you all. Kaur, namaste. I hope I'm audible and the voice is clear. There are no lags. First of all, I think I feel deeply touched and humbled by what Dear Park has invited us all into the space of co-sharing, co-traveling. And I think especially in times which are challenging, when you have people to hold on to. I think we hear you saying sangha. We hear in our tradition we call it sangat, and sangat really means togetherness. When the sang, when the commune comes together and gives gati, gives momentum, gives that power to move forward. And I think it is in that shared space that we are able to move. Yes, Nivedita, thank you for helping us just remind ourselves of what life has been for us. We have experienced it in our lifetime. I always felt we were the privileged lot. I think we had the best of worlds for most of our lives. And the recent times, of course, we were so underprepared internally, mentally, psychologically to deal with any crisis. So these times have brought in that connect with our own self, where we were pushed when the doors outside were shut, we were somewhere pushed to go inwards. We were pushed to connect. When you couldn't connect with people outside, you were pushed to find that inwards. I feel any crisis situation, any crisis in our life. So it's like the outside weather affecting the inside weather. Whenever there is an external noise, how that noise starts to impact us internally, our psychological space, our emotional space, and thereby the interpersonal space as well. And we've all seen that impact in the last few months, a year as well, if I could say that. Typically, any crisis, any adversity has these impact that I tend to notice, not just in myself, but also a lot of people I work with. Uh, the moment they're hit with a crisis, a very big challenge, an obstacle, we tend to see this situation, that challenge, as something which is permanent, which is deeply permeating. You start to believe that, oh my God, this probably is never going to end. Things will never ever get better. That's the kind of energy that you start to kind of internalize at that time. So this challenge is seems more permanent. The second inner reaction to any crisis, I feel, is a state of helplessness. You've tried a lot, you made a lot of effort, and then you suddenly start to feel, I'm not able to do anything. And we all felt it very deeply in the last few months when, the people we love, even those people we were not able to reach out to in terms of family, distant family, friends, even in their most critical times, we were not able to be there for one another. And the sense of helplessness starts to settle in, and you start to feel, I can't handle this anymore. And you feel so alone. You feel, oh my God, there's nobody, there's no support available. And I think the third inner reaction, apart from many other internal reactions, I think today that I'm focusing on is this third inner reaction that we typically tend to have in any challenge is this big question of why me? Why me? This is so unfair. Life is so unfair. So how that why me makes me start to feel even more helpless, even more questioning the whole universal game that we are playing. It makes you full of so much of doubt about life in general. And you see no hope, no end to the tunnel. It just starts to kind of fill over this space, this internal space. And at that time, typically, we start to feel very, very drained. Many of us would have felt the last few months. I think I felt that as well, that my energy was drained. I was feeling so low on energy. I was feeling it sometimes can make you feel so trapped that, oh my God, how do I get out of this? And you can't see a road, you can't see a way forward. But I think like Nivedita shared that how any crisis then when you're going through how the feelings of anxiety, of distress, these emotions, these thoughts of helplessness and this never changing crisis situation, the energy that we radiate at that time, the energy space that is within this body can be vibrating at a low frequency. And that's what we tend to experience at that time. And I think that's when, excuse me for this background score, I think that's the time when life gives us a pause, gives us a RAHAO. RAHAO typically means a pause. The religious text, the Guru Granth in the Sikh tradition, actually, the Guru brings a lot of insight through RAHAO. Every now and then, while we read the religious text, Guru points towards a RAHAO, which says, it's time to take a pause. It's time to re-look, re-evaluate, reflect, and transform. So I think any crisis actually brings in the RAHAO, that pause into our life, where we get to review our life, we get to review our inner world, the outside world, review our understanding of life. And I was growing up in the Sikh tradition. There were some things that we were experiencing as a child. We were going through these traditions. We were exposed to that kind of practice. And not that as a child or even growing up, I realized its value, its worth, its merit. But I think much recently, I was able to see its impact, especially when it comes to my own personal life and lives of many, many people around me. So, three traditions that I want to introduce today to this space is the first, which is the tradition of rag, which is the tradition of music, which is all about singing. And every congregation, if you were to ever walk into a gurudwara, there's always going to be music because the gurus composed all their teaching, the wisdom in rags, in music. So the Granth is composed in rag. It is composed in music. It is meant to be sung. The second tradition I want to introduce, a healing practice that I want to share with all of you, is seva. And I think a lot of world knows the Sikhs for the seva that they bring to the space. But how this, I think, the whole orientation towards compassion and compassion for every being, and to reach out, this need to reach out, and how that starts to create an impact on your inward journey as well, how that becomes a therapeutic process, is what I would like to reflect upon. And the third tradition we were always exposed to was because the wisdom, which was musically composed, but the music was helping us to draw onto that wisdom. It was bringing our focus and attention towards the wisdom. And there were some very interesting narratives in this wisdom, which I would like to share with all of us today, which, especially, I think, during a crisis, a challenge, have been very, very helpful. But right now, I'm going to take a very short pause. And while I talk about rag and music, we'd like to play. We'd like to experiment it for ourselves. Taste it, feel it, and you know it when you experience it. We're just going to share a piece of music, a piece of rag, a piece of bird, that we hear very often. The words go like this: Sang Sakha Sab Taj Gaye, Kau na Nibheo Saath, which means, for the audience who are not familiar with Hindi or Punjabi, is that, you know, when all people around me leave me, whether it's friends and family and all those who love me are not by my side to support me, and when I feel all alone, at that time, Kaho Nanak eh bipat mein. So Nanak says that in such a crisis, adverse situation, I have take ek Raghunath. Take is support. When I don't have an external support, I have the internal support of the divine, of the one consciousness, of the divine spirit, right here, right within, right now. And it is musically composed. So we're just gonna pay attention if you can, close your eyes just to be with this music, just to be in this space for 2 minutes. And then maybe we can, in the chat window, just start sharing after 2 minutes what you felt. How did it make you feel? So I'd like to invite all of you to this little experience of music in rock.
संग सखा सब तज गए, को न निभयो साथ। संग सखा सब तज गए, को न निभयो साथ। कहो नानक एह विपत में, टेक एक रघुनाथ। टेक एक रघुनाथ, 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 टेक एक रघुनाथ।
Thank you for experiencing and allowing yourself to share this. If you could get active in the chat window and would like to share, whilst the words may not have meant a lot, but how was being in that musical space for you? How did you feel? I'm sure we could do this for a little bit longer. We would probably have a better experience, but it did kind of share that tranquility. It was soothing and calming. It was soulful. And I think the whole reason for composing the wisdom in music is because it's a language that it doesn't need any, language doesn't become the barrier. I think each one of us, each one of our heart resonates with music. It just beats with music. And how you remember when I said during crisis, our inner energy field can be very, very low. The frequency can be very low. How soaking in this, it is actually like an anesthetic. It won't feel it. And because you can't feel it, even that temporary anesthetic space allows healing to happen. I think when we put ourselves, we soak our body and mind into a musical vibrational frequency, it just helps calm the nerves. It just helps soothe this whole thought process, which is so negative, which feels so depressing. It suddenly starts to create more calmness, more soothing effect, and that gives us the space to heal. So suddenly the emotional distress is settling down. You're feeling more relaxed. And you remember when it felt permanent, nothing will ever change. Because you're part of this musical journey, you start to feel different. You start to feel different internally. You're not feeling so low and so drained anymore. And it shifts your perspective towards that adversity where you say, where you were thinking it's permanent, it's never ending. You start to see, I'm already feeling better. I'm not feeling as distressed and as distraught I was a little while ago. In fact, Gnanak says, Suniye dukh paap ka nas. By listening to this music, listening to this wisdom, the suffering, the pain, the negativity starts to be erased, starts to be wiped off. And a lot of scientific studies today kind of support that argument that how music is therapeutic. And we grew up listening to this kind of music, whether it was a joyous occasion, whether it was a solemn occasion, whether it was something very, very sad, but there was always singing. And that kind of uplifted the energy that we were in at that time. So how rag music tends to heal, that temporary effect where you feel immediate instant relief. And as you start to feel better, you have more energy. Like how in COVID times, I can see, at least in the Indian subcontinent, we have these nuskas. We have one family member tried steam inhalation, somebody tried a haldi, the golden turmeric, and you said, oh, it relieved me, and you want to take it to your family, to your friends, to everybody you know, that it's benefited me. Now I want you to try it as well. So how when you start to feel better, you actually get the energy to also share with the other. And that's when the tradition of seva. I think we grew up understanding that while we were working on this inner journey, it was important to reach out to the masses. As a psychologist, how I see this working and impacting people is when I'm feeling helpless. I feel, oh, I'm not capable of handling this situation. When you start to notice that, oh, there's something I can do for another. There's something I can do for this one. If I can't make a big difference, I can make a little difference. If I can't make a difference to all, I can make a difference to this one. When you start offering yourself, offering your wisdom, offering your energy, just to share with another, just to maybe uplift somebody, just to maybe listen to somebody, it's like you become part of this nature, because nature is always giving. Nature is always there for another. The sun, the water, the trees. Nature was designed in a way where we coexist. We exhale carbon dioxide that the plants need, and these plants then release oxygen that we need to survive. There's this beautiful homeostasis that nature is designed with. And when we tend to reach out, I believe we start to become a part of this homeostasis. And I feel that body and mind, which is there in service for another, start to receive this power internally from the nature, from the divine, to be able to uplift others even more. So I think it helps you align yourself. And when this deep compassion is what you're rooted in, Nanak reminds us of how Taram is is Daya's child, is Daya's offspring, which means if you want to be dharmi, if you want to have dharma in life, it cannot be without compassion. You will first be compassionate towards yourself and the fellow beings and to every entity around you. And that's when you can start living a dharmic life. So how reaching out in seva starts to heal yourself. And I was very recently looking at studies that whenever you have an act of compassion and kindness, your body is filled with serotonin. It is filled with all these happy hormones that we call, and it is already starting to heal you. Even if they don't revert and they don't return a thank you note, or they don't come back and return the favor, your nature is already favoring you with these hormones that are creating a space for healing within. And and every time we would go to these congregations, there was always this wisdom that was being shared through music, through reflection. And every time in the evening prayer, my attention would go to this one pankti that said, Dukh daru, sukh rog paya. Normally, we like sukh, we like happiness, we are all chasing pleasures in life. And this pankti would always draw my attention, where the guru is reflecting and saying that dukh, suffering, is actually the medicine. And all these pleasures of life are actually the cause of suffering. And I would wonder how come. But then I think when you go through that space of suffering, in that space, when you, rather than going outwards, you start connecting deep within, you start to realize how it opened up a dimension that was never available to me, how it helped me see things more clearly. The guru would remind and say, life, what is life like? It is like a bubble in water. Like bubbles, you will see these ripples in water. That's what life is like. Jaise jalte budbuda. Like on surface of water, you'll see these bubbles. That's what life is like. So impermanent. This whole question of why me? Why me? Why am I having to suffer? Why is life so unfair to me? And every time I looked at the ninth Guru, which is Guru Tegh Bahadur, we were celebrating the 400th centenary year of their birth. And there's a time when there's a lot of crisis in the Indian subcontinent. There's a lot of oppression. There's no religious freedom. People are being oppressed to be brought back, to be converted. And that's when the Kashmir, the belt, the religious people have come and approached him to say, we're under a lot of distress and we are under threat. We'll be massacred if we don't convert. And at that time, his one act of sacrifice, for him to choose, for his little son, Gobind, to choose that my dad, who else will give this sacrifice but you? When I listen to this tale every time, it reminds me where I was asking in adversity, why me? The Guru was asking, why not me? If not me, then who else? And I think that's the space that opens up about accepting life as it is. The way life unfolds when we're in acceptance through this wisdom that life is temporary, everything is temporary in this life. I think when you start to connect with that temporariness, it paves way towards healing. So today, I'm very, very thankful to be able to share these three dimensions that have not just personally helped me to heal through personal distress, through the last 1 year of crisis, but I think it has helped a lot of us around in this community to be able to uplift ourselves. The Guru reminds us that when wisdom of the Shabad enters our mind, the body and the mind tend to become pure and cleansed and at ease. From this ease, they tend to come at ease. We'll be more than happy to share. We all can come together sometime to also soak ourselves in some of these practices. Thank you very, very much. And we hope we all can leverage on this inner strength, the Ek Raghunath, the one divine consciousness within each one in this crisis. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Avneet. I wish we had more time to soak in some of these practices, and really for taking us through not just a crisis, but also how it gives us an opportunity to pause and providing us that beautiful access to Rag as a way of breaking through impermanence, of Seva as a way of working through helplessness, and of wisdom to really shift perspective. Immensely grateful. Thank you. I'd like to now invite our next speaker, Asha Shipman. So Dr. Asha Shipman has earned her advanced degrees in ecology and anthropology from the University of Connecticut. She's an experienced educator, having taught for almost 20 years at high school, college, and university levels. She joined the Yale University Chaplains Office in 2013 and in 2016 became the second Hindu chaplain and the first female chaplain with the full-time university appointment in the US. In this role, she collaborates for a variety of programs and serves as the advisor for the Hindu Students Organization. She offers pastoral counseling, often while taking long walks around the campus. Yes, it's something we all seem to miss here. But really very grateful. Asha enjoys bringing thought provoking, colorful, kinetic, and soul nourishing events to the Yale community. Today, Asha with us is going to discuss self compassion and kindness as a means to acknowledge personal suffering. She will link yogic breathing practices and meditation as tools for self care to alleviate suffering by fostering a sense of equanimity and tranquility, as well as reinforcing compassion for others. Thank you so much for being with us, Asha. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Nivedita. And my thanks to Prashant for convening and hosting us, and Nivedita to you for shaping the vision behind today's panel and for moderating. So today what I'd like to do is lead everyone through some very brief basic breathing exercises so we can just relax a bit. I'm already relaxed by Avneet's beautiful music, so we're in the right mode, I hope. But before I do that, I want to provide some context for why these exercises, why I think they're excellent tools during a time of crisis, and particularly now. I'll touch a little bit on philosophy, but not a lot. So just for some background, I'm a Hindu chaplain, and as a spiritual caregiver, part of my work is pastoral counseling. And this is different from clinical counseling in that it is grounded in philosophies and practices of a faith tradition and adheres to professional chaplaincy standards. It's a space of spiritual friendship that leads to self-understanding for the care recipient. I often co-create with the care recipient individually tailored practices and goals for thriving. I also create spiritually grounded programming that I think fits the needs of the larger communities within my university. But how do I determine those needs? It's usually through the pastoral care sessions that I run. So similar to Avneet, I have been running pastoral care sessions through the pandemic, and the questions I ask my care recipients are, what is happening in your life right now, and what do you need? And here are some of the key themes that emerged. I think you'll find some of them recognizable. I can't think clearly. I am overwhelmed by fear, loneliness, and fatigue. I am so afraid to get COVID-19 and harm my elders, but I have to work outside the house. I'm stressed out trying to figure out how to balance all the needs of everyone who is now at home in terms of space, in terms of supporting schooling and work and the technology requirements to do all of this. I am terrified about navigating the uncontrolled world outside my own space. I am in mourning and I need tools to help me grieve twice over for loved ones who have passed without proper death rituals, and for myself that I must grieve alone rather than with my community and family. And lastly, I feel bad about feeling so bad. Why can't I handle this? Usually I am strong and can take what life deals me, but I feel paralyzed. And much of this fits in with what Avneet so compassionately articulated. And I related to much of what I was hearing then, and perhaps you too. So in considering how to help my care recipients, I considered the fear of COVID-19 and the desire to improve overall lung health. And I looked for practices which could offer grounding, clarity, internal space, and resilience. I was drawn to pranayama and meditation practices because they are simple and yet immensely improve lung capacity and offer quick relief to the nervous system. So in this past academic year, I sponsored classes on pranayama and meditation at my university. And the feedback has been tremendously positive in ways that I could not have even imagined. I've been told that these classes have reduced loneliness by offering a supportive virtual community, that the practices have offered a means to short-circuiting panic attacks, which are also, there's the breathlessness there, helped people sleep, offered mental clarity, and even helped with allergies. So this is why I wish to discuss these practices with you today. But what I'd like to start with is this concept of feeling bad about feeling bad. Now, most of us, we have some degree of inner resilience. We can meet the needs. We are strong. We want to be the problem. We are the problem solvers. We can cope. We are able to find solutions and be very creative. In a normal crisis, we can act. We are very capable of taking the lead. But again, as Avneet described, this is not a normal crisis, the pandemic. A normal crisis is episodic. A normal crisis has a clear beginning, middle, and end, and a resolution. A normal crisis is therefore temporally contained. It's also usually geographically contained. It happens in one place. And contrast this normal crisis, which is not something anyone ever wants to endure anyways, with the coronavirus pandemic. We have a global health, social, and economic disaster that is prolonged. It still continues in many parts of the world, and we still have the uncertainty of the path ahead. And so humans were not built for this kind of stress, this prolonged stress. We are evolutionarily adapted to the short sprints of stress and crisis management. We're really attuned to that. But for the long term, we don't do well with this psychologically. It takes a lot for us to actually manage it. So for those feeling bad about feeling bad, I encourage some self-compassion, Maitri Karuna. Now, compassion has been very evident in how people have responded and offered assistance during this pandemic. It's amazing what people have done for each other, for family, for perfect strangers, for the good of others. It's been one of the silver linings in this ridiculous, horrible episode. But we should also, and we can, turn that kindness inward to the deserving self. Negative thoughts and emotions may be swirling in our minds, but they do not define who we are. Feeling stuck is legitimate. And so how to get unstuck? And I think that's really, for me, one of the reasons for us all to be here is how do we manage and move ourselves through in the most compassionate way. And there are so many practices, so we're able to tap into much. So yogic breathing practices and meditative practices were developed to restore and maintain balance in the human nervous system. They all honor a concept of divinity, a force that underlies natural cycles on many levels. And just basically, our nervous system exists in two parts. We have the sympathetic nervous system, which causes the fight or flight response. We have the parasympathetic nervous system, which is our safety net. And one of its jobs is to reset us back to normal after the catastrophe is over. Now, many people have been skeptical of the therapeutic benefits of yogic practices, but there is a growing body of evidence that they activate the parasympathetic nervous system. They disrupt the sympathetic nervous system activity and flip a switch towards recovery. And we can use the breath to activate the parasympathetic nervous system. So what I thought we'd do is we would try this. If you're comfortable trying this, I have an app that I use. It's called the breathing app, and I'll put in the chat information about it. I'm hoping that you can hear it. It consists of two tones, an inhalation tone and an exhalation tone. The inhalation tone is higher than the exhalation tone. What we're going to do is we're going to inhale for 4 seconds and exhale for 6 seconds. We will do this for each exercise. I'll do 3 of them with you for a minute. And what you need to do is just sit comfortably. You can be in a chair. I'm in a chair. You can be cross-legged on the ground. You can be however comfortable you can be, and also able to keep your spine erect. And what we're going to do is take some deep breaths right now, just through your nose, in and out. It's just nasal breathing. And then just to get us started, we're not timing this yet, but just to get us started with some nice deep breaths in and out through the nose. And what you can do is you can even put your hands on your lower floating ribs, and you can feel the effects of your breathing. So keep breathing, and just a little to help us just have in our heads what's going on. There's a band of muscle called the diaphragm that separates the chest cavity from the abdominal cavity. And at rest, it bows up a little bit. As you breathe in, the lungs expand and the diaphragm flattens to make room for the lungs. And at the same time, the rib cage moves outwards and up a little. And this expansion allows the lungs to take in a lot of air. And as you breathe out, the lungs release the air, contract, the diaphragm bows up again, and the rib cage is moving inwards and down. So try to follow your breath as it enters through the nostrils, moves to the back of the mouth, down the trachea and into the lungs. Try to feel the movement of the rib cage outwards and inwards. And while you're noticing all this, try to relax and let the movement of the breath lead to feeling less strained and less tense. And while you do this, notice your eyes. Perhaps the muscles are a bit tense around your eyes, maybe too much zooming or reading, or you're tired. You can mindfully calm the eye muscles as you breathe. You can do one of two things. You can fix your gaze at a spot and visualize the muscles relaxing, or you can close your eyes and mentally fix your gaze on a spot between the brows and do the same mentally loosening of the eyebrows or the eye muscles. So go ahead, whatever's comfortable, and we'll try this app, see if you can hear it. And what we're going to do first is we'll time again. We're going to do 4 seconds of inhalation and 6 seconds of exhalation, and I'll coach you for a little while. If you can't hear it, then you can count on your own too. And we're just going to do 1 minute with both nostrils. If you don't feel like doing this, that's fine. Just sit and relax. Maybe keep your eyes closed and offer yourself the self-compassion of just being. So let's try. So we're going to start now. I hope you can hear it. So inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Inhale, exhale. Inhale, exhale. Now keep with this rhythm, and if you want a deeper exhalation, you can pull the abdomen in a little bit to push more air out, because actually the relaxation happens with the exhalation. Okay, so that was 1 quick minute, really quick minute. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take in a breath through a single nostril. We'll start with the left, and then we'll do a minute, and we'll switch to the right. Now, I know many of you already know breathing practices, but just for those who are not familiar, we'll use the Vishnu Mudra hand posture. Now, the way we do it is we take our right hand, and when we're closing the right nostril, so we breathe in through the left, we take the thumb and we close just this flap of our nostril. We close it gently so that the breath comes entirely through the left nostril. And when we are breathing through the right nostril, we can use either the pinky finger. I'm missing part of my pinky finger, so I'm using my index finger. I'm sorry, my ring finger, and I close the left nostril flap, and that opens up the right nostril. So modify as you need. Try to use the right hand though. And then your left hand, you can hold your thumb and forefinger together and your palm upward, and you can rest it on your knee, as close to your knee as possible. And what you're doing is you're closing a circuit, kind of an energetic circuit. So you can put that left hand with the forefinger and thumb linked, press together and palm open on the left knee. And then you will take your Vishnu Mudra and you will use your thumb to close the right nostril. So we're going to breathe through the left nostril only for a minute. And the left nostril, breathing in through the left nostril actually is supposed to enhance calm in the body. So you can actually, if you're feeling stressed out, you can do this left nostril breathing, pace it so that you have more seconds exhaling than inhaling, but this actually can offer very quick relief. So here we go. Again, holding your hand like this, closing the right nostril. Okay, so in, out. In, out. And again, you can relax your eye muscles. Make sure you're sitting up straight. Concentrate on the movement of the breath. And just try to feel the breath moving through your body and a sense of oxygen relaxing yourself. Okay, so now we'll do the right. So you're going to use your pinky finger or your ring finger to close the left nostril. If you're congested, because often we are slightly congested, just use both nostrils. That's no problem. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. See if you can move more breath through your body with each inhalation and then out with each exhalation. Okay, the last exercise we'll do is alternate nasal breathing. So we always start with the left, and we'll inhale for 4, and we'll close the left nostril and exhale out the right for 6. We will inhale through the right for 4, exhale out for 6. And we'll do this also for a minute. Okay, and again, if you're feeling like this is too much, just inhale through both nostrils, exhale through both nostrils. Exhale right. Inhale right. Exhale left. Inhale left. Exhale right. And continue. So just to get a little bit into the philosophy behind these exercises, and as I talk, you can continue to do the 4 and 6 breathing pattern if you'd like to. From a Hindu perspective, these breathing exercises, along with meditation, are a means to connect with the Atman, that spark of divinity, that seed of joy that resides within the lotus of the heart. Pranayama and meditation at their deepest levels lead to an altering of the consciousness such that the ego merges with the creator, the I dissolves, and there is only the divine. This is then a form of worship, in fact, and it can be the most difficult worship to achieve. Yogis and sages tell us that it leads to tranquility and ultimately to the highest form of joy. And Swami Brahmarupananda says that the highest form of joy is that within ourselves, not even dependent upon the body, because the Atman, the soul, is eternal and unchanging and independent of the body. And in the Bhagavad Gita, Sri Krishna says, once you are established in the joy of yourself, no adversity can shake you from the joy. There is no other gain that surpasses the bliss of the self. So we're taking some self-compassion, we're turning it inwards, and we're allowing ourselves to find some peace, some grounding. What I like about these exercises and what drew me to them is they're very basic. These are actually pre-pranayama exercises, right? The alternate nasal breathing, resonance breathing. They're simple, they're free, and they're the stepping stones to putting a brake on a very hyper-stimulated nervous system, to restoring balance, to establishing feelings of tranquility that can persist even when you're not doing the breathing exercises. If you do these regularly, you may experience an overall sense of calm. You may sleep more deeply. You may have more patience and resilience. And you may find that you are able to move through your grief, your fears, and anxieties with a greater sense of control and ease. These exercises can be found on YouTube. I can put a few sources down, but I highly encourage you to try them. And it takes a while to get used to doing them. So give yourself the benefit of time. You can take even 10 minutes in the morning and try this. You could do this before bedtime. I've heard people really benefit from doing pranayama before bed. They tell me that they sleep very, very well. Don't feel like you have to do it at a particular time of day. Yes, there's a prescription for early morning. Yes, we're all very busy and that might not work. If you do them at all, you will find, I hope, feeling more restored and again, gaining a little bit more resilience and a self-nurturing that you really do deserve, because we've all been through a lot, friends. So thank you again for inviting me to speak and share what I have been doing and what I've been doing with my communities. And Nivedita, back to you.
Thank you so much, Asha. I think the idea of moving from stuck to unstuck through these yogic practices of breathing, more importantly, taking us through them so we can bring them into our lives. And of course, connecting it back with the philosophy, extremely precious. Thank you very much. And now joining us all the way from Sweden, I'd like to invite Gustav Ericsson. He's a Christian hospital and prison chaplain in Sweden, also serving on the church suicide prevention helpline. Since his teens, he has enjoyed studying and practicing Zen meditation and has received Dharma transmission from Zen master Budo Nishijima in Japan, and was later ordained as a priest in the Lutheran Church of Sweden. His interests include the meeting of Christianity and Buddhism and the role of meditation in chaplaincy and being with suffering. He's the author of the book, My Christian Journey with Zen. He lives with his family in Umeå in northern Sweden. Very happy to have you with us, Gustav. And Gustav is going to take us through the Christian perspectives on mindfulness of breathing. Over to you.
Thank you so much. So the first question is if I'm audible. Is the microphone okay? All right. So thanks so much. I'm happy and grateful to be with you here to share something. Thanks Nivedita and Prashant for arranging this, holding this webinar together. Thank you Avneet and Asha for your presentations, very touching. And thanks to all of you who have joined us here. I'm looking forward to sharing and discussing after the presentations. I'll also write my email in the chat room afterwards if anyone wants to get in touch. So I'm speaking here from northern Sweden. Right now the sun is shining, but it's just a few weeks ago that the last snow left the ground here in Sweden. And it's so amazing that it's possible to meet like this across continents and across traditions. I will share something from my limited understanding, and also someday I'm hoping to be able to visit the beautiful deer park. It looks fantastic. So on an individual level, the COVID crisis has affected us so very differently. I mean, some of us have suffered from social isolation, while others from intense family situations during lockdown with small children in small spaces. Many of us have lost jobs, income, and many have suffered deeply from sickness, from the loss of a near and dear one, by grief. So this crisis causes suffering all over the world in so many forms, and in one way or another, it's affected us all. So over here in Sweden, as you said, Nivedita, I serve as a hospital and prison chaplain, and also in the church suicide helpline. And my experience is that intense or strong emotions or states of mind, they can be a bit contagious. For example, when I sit with a patient in a hospital ward, for example, who has severe difficulties with breathing, this has been especially true for me. I remember a patient who was dying with from lung cancer. And although I was not the one being sick, the anxiety in the room, it got under my skin and into my belly. So after seeing the patient, I was wondering what I was doing wrong. I was wondering if I had spiritually failed somehow, because I felt that way. The anxiety I felt afterwards in my belly. And as we all know, one of the more severe effects of the COVID virus is difficulty with breathing. And I want to share today just a brief reflection on spirit and breath in the Bible. And the Bible has two major parts. First is the Old Testament, or the Hebrew Bible. And it uses the Hebrew word ruach, which means breath or spirit, okay? And in the New Testament, there is a similar word in Greek, pneuma, which also means both breath and spirit. So I'm not very good with digital presentations, so I made little notes like this. So ruach and pneuma, breath and spirit. And the theme for this webinar is to explore spiritual practices in a time of crisis. And I find it interesting to note that the Bible uses the same words for both spirit and for breath. So for example, in the very, very beginning of the Bible, when the world was created, before any life, it says that the Spirit of God, or the breath of God, Ruach Elohim, moved in the empty darkness above the waters. And then later on, it says that God blew life into the nostrils of human beings to give them life. And whatever we think about creation myths, I think these texts start saying that the very foundation for life, breath, spirit, the ground of being, was both there in the beginning, long before any one of us, and also here right now in each and every one of us. So to anyone listening, however your life has been affected by this COVID crisis, and with respect for your specific situation and suffering, I want to share what's been helpful to me. And perhaps it's something for you to try and then decide whether it's for you or not. And in short, the pattern of practice that I return to again and again, it can be described with 4 parts. So I made this little note here. The first part is to stop. The second one is to reconnect. Then the third, to release. And fourth, to begin anew. So stop, reconnect, release, and begin anew. And stopping can be to sit down for prayer or for meditation. But I think there are so many ways to stop. There are many ways to slow down. My mind, I'm speaking for myself, can be like a monkey or a frog, just jumping around from one thing to another. When I began working as a hospital priest, my former colleague and friend, Anders Axelsson, he introduced me to the job by saying that I should walk slowly in the hospital corridors and wards. The rest, he said, it will come later. So walk slowly. In an environment where many people walk fast, I should walk more slowly. And sadly, Anders died a couple of weeks ago. I'm very grateful for what he shared and how he offered guidance in many ways. Another way to stop was taught to me by a Buddhist nun in Plum Village, Thich Nhat Hanh's monastery in France. It may sound a little bit silly, she said, but when she was overcome by difficult emotions or states of mind, she would sometimes excuse herself and go to the bathroom. She said in almost all social situations, it's possible to go to the bathroom. It's socially acceptable. So it may sound too simple. It may sound a bit silly, but I think in some situations, it's very good practical advice when it's necessary to stop and to make some space in an intense situation. I've used it a few times at the hospital, just to take a short break and collect myself, take a few breaths, going to the bathroom for a minute. So finding ways to stop and slowing down that works for you, and then reconnect. And to me, reconnecting is not to create or achieve something new, but it is rather to return to what already is. And one way is to return, to reconnect with your body and breathing, to embrace your breathing in and breathing out with awareness, as we have tried and practiced during this webinar already. To pay attention to one's bodily sensations, just to see them for what they are. By that, to kind of touch down on the ground. To come back to body and breathing like an anchor, sometimes in a storm. Or another way, when you have stopped running, to look up to the sky. Such a simple thing. To look at the stars or the clouds. Perhaps there are sunshine, birds. Some of us live near an ocean, near mountains or forests. Some of us do not, but the sky is always available. Or a nearby church or temple or mosque, whatever gives you a sense of awe, a sense of wonder and profound beauty. That I am such a small, small part of all this. But while being such a small part, I'm also a part of all this. To me, it's reconnecting with Ruach Elohim, the spirit or breath of God that was before me, that is now, and will ever be. So finding a way to stop and slow down, and a way that works for you to reconnect. And then release. When I was in Plum Village and practiced walking meditation, which I enjoy very much, one of the monks said to me that I was free to release whatever I was carrying into the ground that carried me. So perhaps he also saw my monkey mind, that I had some things to release. I tried, and somehow it worked. In my experience, it is to first stop and reconnect that makes release possible. And of course, many things stay with me anyway, but the memories, experiences, the emotions and we kind of hold each other more lightly with help from this release. We hold each other more lightly. So in the Christian language, I would say that we are free to release or surrender whatever we carry within us into God's hands. So after I had visited this patient with lung cancer, I had a kind of a knot of anxiety in my belly. And I remember I sometimes stopped by the hospital's prayer room to light a small prayer candle. There's a place for that in the corner of the room. It was kind of a ritual of release. And I've found that to me, certain small, simple rituals can be helpful in order to let go and to release. Small rituals as simple as lighting a candle with that intention of releasing, of surrendering into God's hands. And another way that I want to mention that's been important to me in order to release what is weighing me down is to talk honestly with a friend, or actually anyone that I can share honestly with. I think maybe despite all the spiritual advice in the world, perhaps good friendship is the most important matter. I think sometimes. And perhaps especially in challenging times. And if you feel like you do not have a friend, please do take steps to reach out in any way that you can. There are good people. There are good people, and sometimes a friend is closer than you think. So, stopping and slowing down, reconnecting, releasing, and then the fourth, beginning anew. And beginning anew means, most of all, I think, to be kind to yourself. When I had visited a patient with lung cancer, I had so many critical thoughts toward myself. Why did I feel anxiety? I should be more professional on that. What if the patient or his family had noticed what I felt in some way? Maybe I'd said something stupid. So many thoughts like that. But the important thing was never these thoughts. The important thing, I believe, was that I had a kind of habitual pattern of where to turn with these thoughts, where to turn with these emotions. And from spiritual practice, I knew that I needed to stop with them. I needed to reconnect and release. And then when I was able to begin anew, I could sit with the patient and his family again the next day, or perhaps in a few days. So in the Bible, in the Gospel of John, after Jesus has died on the cross and been buried, the disciples of Jesus were afraid of what was going to happen to them. They were scared. So they had locked themselves inside a room in a house. They had locked themselves in fear, and they hid there. And then Jesus appears to them. They see Jesus again in a new way, standing among them, and Jesus showed them his wounds in his hands and in his side. And he says the word peace to them. Twice he says the word peace to the disciples in the midst of their fear. And then he breathed on them. He breathed on them and said the word peace. And the Greek word, as we know, is pneuma. He breathed on them and said the word peace. And pneuma, the Greek equivalent of the Hebrew ruach, meaning both breath and spirit. And after that, Jesus sends them out from their locked room. He sends them out into the world in peace. So I think that in this difficult situation, we are all called. We're called from our different backgrounds and different traditions to work together in this kind of spiritual peace. With all our skills, shortcomings, with our wounds, with our fears, but together, one breath, one step at a time, and being kind to ourselves and to each other throughout it all. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Gustav, for connecting us with the Old and New Testament of spirit and breath, and of taking us through the steps of stop, reconnect, release, and begin anew, from knowing our patterns and really breaking through them, and with such practical ways. Immense gratitude. Thank you very much. I'd like to now introduce you to our next speaker, and I would like to invite Elaine Yuen. Dr. Elaine Yuen is an educator and a chaplain. She received her chaplaincy training at Thomas Jefferson University Hospital in Philadelphia and is ordained as a Upadhyaya, or a Buddhist minister, within the Shambhala Buddhist community. As professor at Naropa University in Boulder, Colorado, she's taught courses on pastoral caregiving, contemplative arts, and Buddhist studies between 2012 and 2020. Presently living in Philadelphia, she continues to be interested in how we shape our social interactions with caring, creativity, and mindful presence. Today, what Elaine is going to speak with us about is really navigating the field of awareness, Buddhist practices and compassion in the community, where we can start with self, but also take it to the communities that we live and work with. Welcome, and thank you for being with us, Elaine. Over to you.
Thank you so much. And it's been so wonderful to spend this time with all of our participants and our presenters. So many things are coming back to me from Asha's presentation on the breath and really deepening how we ground ourselves with breath. Gustav's speaking of being a chaplain and also I was reminded of, in my chaplaincy training, I was speaking with the medical students and telling them, well, you need to have mindfulness and peacefulness, but maybe that lasts only a moment. And then you must go and do something as medical students, but as all of us now, we're very busy. So sort of the alternation of those two things. And of course, Avneet's presentation with music and service and wisdom was very wonderful. So what I'd like to just briefly talk about and explore is how, since I've come back to Philadelphia, I taught at a small university in Boulder, Colorado for a number of years, which is very, very contemplative in the Rocky Mountains, if any of you are familiar with that. And now I'm back in Philadelphia, which is a very busy city with lots of diversity, actually, lots of diversity of opinions, not only ethnic groups, but also diversity of opinions, political. We have a lot of political diversity here, ethnic diversity, which comes along with different understandings of culture, beliefs, how we speak to each other, how we treat each other. So a lot of what I've been thinking about, especially for this presentation, is how do we actually expand our practices, whether they be mindfulness of breathing or our pranayama practice or our understanding through music and raga. How do we expand that peacefulness and happiness that we might engender through those personal practices? How do we offer that? How do we actually have the, I would say, bravery and some people use the word resilience, but I would say just bravery and confidence to open ourselves up to a larger world where we perhaps may or may not agree with what's going on, with the pace of what's happening, the busyness, or the grief, the sadness. How do we open ourselves up to that and share our personal abilities towards peacefulness and happiness? How do we share that with what in Buddhism we call all beings, all sentient beings? So I was reminded of the metta prayer, metta being Pali for, or sometimes it's translated as Maitri, which is Sanskrit, but it is sometimes translated as loving kindness, friendliness, I would say bravery and inner resilience. How do we offer that to all sentient beings? So I was inspired by Avneet's presentation on music, and I'd like to actually sing the metta prayer for you. One of my colleagues who has since died actually has put it to music. May all beings be peaceful. May all beings be happy. May all beings be safe. May all beings awaken to the light of their true nature. May all beings be free. So I love that, and it's actually a round. If we were in person, we would sing it as a round where a group of you start and then another group. But I feel that the first two lines of the prayer, may all beings be peaceful, may all beings be happy, Perhaps we could take this entire prayer as both an aspiration, a hope, a wish, because obviously at this time, all beings are not peaceful, happy, safe, or awake, free. In fact, at this time, it's very highlighted that we're not in this situation. But I feel in what we call the Bodhisattva path of Buddhism that we have our aspirations, our wishes, and then we also have our application to sort of make that happen. And there's a lot to say about that, but I would just like to take this moment to think about how can we be personally, first of all, and then how can we extend peacefulness to people? How can we, and I feel that our presentations this morning have very wonderfully illustrated how we could be peaceful personally, how we could develop some kind of happiness, inner happiness. And even safety, we could develop, perhaps in just a moment, some kind of safety. But the question that I'm contemplating more and more as I've come back to this busy city that I live in now is how can we extend that to others? And that to me requires some kind of what in my tradition of Shambhala Buddhism is we call bravery or courage. So to me, it's actually the willingness to be vulnerable and open to others. So it's not so much that we have a perfect peacefulness or happiness or safety that we could offer, but simply if we are open, if we open our hearts with some kind of courage that we are worthy to share our own inner being with each other, whatever that is, however imperfect that might be, however rife with disappointment that might be, that is part of our path, that we can actually share that heart, that what we sometimes call the genuine heart of sadness with each other. Because as many of you have already commented, this is a very sad time that we are not able to be with each other in person. I was hoping to come to Deer Park last year. That was not to be. And at the same time, we can connect in this somewhat imperfect but wonderful way through the internet. So that is how we can be peaceful, happy, even safe. I know safety is an interesting word, especially in the United States right now. We have a lot of issues here with different being actually Asian American, which includes the South Asian community, but as well as the African American communities here. So, but I think it takes just some kind of bravery that we're willing to offer our mutual humanity to others, that they could be safe in whatever way it is, whether it's providing oxygen cylinders or just food. There's a lot of aspects of what we call the sort of the material world that are needed right now to make sure people are safe. So that takes bravery. Awakening to the light of one's own true nature. I feel that that's actually been a theme of what we've been talking about today. And the presentations have been wonderful and reminding me of actually when I was teaching at Naropa that we had so many traditions there, and also sort of traditions that articulated and practiced through contemplative practices, often joining with the breath. So centering prayer is a Christian practice. And a lot of the breath practices that Asha presented are very well practiced there. I liked especially Avneet's comment on seva or service, because that is so important for us to maintain our humanity, that we're able to serve each other. And also to be brave enough that we acknowledge that we can serve each other, that we can perhaps do small gestures, even on the internet. And if you're able to step out of your house to do, to help organize things, that's also great. But I feel right now we're, the service aspect of how we help each other is very creative. I feel there's a lot of creativity, but also it's very important that we connect with each other in some way. So Gustav's comment on loneliness, having a friend, you might even develop friends through your mutual service activities, actually, sharing tasks to do on the internet. But I think all of the service points to how we develop resilience as human beings. And there's a lot of, as so many of, as our other panelists have referred to the psychological studies that are showing that. But I feel that however we can connect as humans is so important. So whether it's out of service, whether it's out of singing, whether it's out of being with family, it's very important that we remember our basic humanity, what we call basic goodness, or our awakened heart, bodhicitta, that we can actually remember that and awaken to that light of our own true nature through whatever practice we're doing or whatever gestures we can do. I even like smiling. Here in Philadelphia, we have a lot of, I drink a lot of coffee at the gas station. So it's smiling through the mask at your checkout person. And that simple gesture could be just how you connect at that time. So it could be simple, and also, as our presenters have shown, very profound connection. And that sharing of our human experience takes some of the edge off of our what we also call our pervasive suffering. So as Buddhists, we acknowledge that there is suffering. That is what the Buddha's first sermon was on, but also that we can connect with each other, and through that, in the midst of that, what we call samsara, we still have our imperfect ways of connecting with each other. And so that gets to the last aspect of what actually I love Avneet's presentation. She talked about the wisdom, or how do we make purpose and meaning with our values. And I think the values that we all share are ones of generosity and purpose. So if we can be generous with each other, generosity in Buddhism's one of the first, what we call the paramitas, of one of the first ways that we kind of connect through skillful means. But I don't believe Buddhism has a corner on generosity. I feel generosity is sort of common to all traditions. And there's some kind of worthiness to being generous with each other. So whether that's generosity of material things, generosity of our words and gestures, our kindness, our emotions. Or it could just be generosity of our understandings and being willing to actually lend an ear is some kind of generosity. So the path of chaplaincy, which I trained in, of interfaith chaplaincy, it was a path of a great deal of listening and then also offering back meaning. However, whatever we took in, we would offer back as some kind of meaning, whether it was spiritual. So it could have been, in Philadelphia, many people are Christian Catholics. So it could be a prayer, a Christian prayer, whether it was psychological understanding. So maybe family dynamics are a little rough. So we would ask people to hold hands around the bed of the father who was unexpectedly had a heart attack. So that would some kind of psychological understanding, or it could be simply conversing about here in Philadelphia, we have a lot of sports teams. So it could be talking about soccer, or we have what's called football here, but I know in other countries, football is different. But it could be something like that. It could be simply like talking about the very ordinary aspects of our life, the weather, the traffic, the sports, and that all of those things in conversation of listening and offering back serve to connect as with each other as in my chaplaincy practice. And I've sort of taken that to expand to my day-to-day practice of being with others. And the last thing I want to offer is I thought we had such a wonderful session of pranayama with Asha that I sometimes encourage people to actually, as we're breathing in, to imagine listening. You could listen to yourself, or you could be listening to the radio or your friends. Listen as you're breathing in. What's coming in to your, not only the breath, but sort of the consciousness, the mind. And then as you're breathing out in that very long breath, what do you share with others? So in conversations, what do we share with each other? How do we comfort each other? Or perhaps it's anger. What do we share with through injustice with each other? Or maybe it's logistics. What do we share? How many food packages do we need to send with each other? So all of that is taking in, perhaps it's information, perhaps it's kindness, perhaps it's just the simple act of breathing, listening to your body take in the breath, and then giving out. So I'd just like to close with that. So let's just take a moment of, I don't know if I can do the nostrils, Asha, but let's take a moment of breathing in. Whatever you've taken from this seminar, and then breathing out. Whatever you'd like to offer to each other, benefit. Breathing in, perhaps the question and answers. Breathing out, some sense of relaxation and joy, whatever that is. Just noticing the mind's contents as you breathe in. Perhaps it's letting go, as Gustav said, breathing out. being present. Breathing out. How do we share? How do we speak to each other? So I'm leaving you with that. So thank you everyone for allowing me to be part of this. And it's wonderful to see everyone across the world at this time.
Thank you so much, Elaine, for really drawing attention back to saying we need to connect with the larger world through our common humanity. From a simple smile to really using breath to finding ways of giving expression to our values. But I think what was also extremely sweet was how you connected back with what all three of the earlier speakers spoke about. And in some way, there was so much of watching you connect, interconnect, and bring it all back so that in some ways it was almost like an embodiment of what you were guiding and nudging us towards. So thank you very much for that. Now that all of us have spoken, the floor is open to Q&A. Feel free to raise your hand so then we can allow you to unmute. Yes, Darshan Singh, 1 second.
Nivedita, thank you so much for hosting such a beautiful session and reflections coming from different parts of spiritual spaces. My question is to Gustav, if I spell right, Gustav, right? So he was talking about spirit and breath and these four things that stop, reconnect, release, and start again. So I'm kind of trying to see a connection between this Ruha and phenomena. I also write something and I want to show it to Gustav so that he can reflect on what my question is. So I want to see how Gustav look at a situation when he said, when you are in hard times, when you have those challenging times and find a friend to talk to. And if you don't find a good friend to talk to, then just seek out, there are good people. And when we say there are good people, what we are connecting with, what is in that people, what is in that person that we really seek to connect with, what is really that space of the connection, to what I'm really trying to connect through that person or a friend. And I'm just taking his words to explore this, and I want to know from Gustav how he reaches to that space of reconnect. And I'm just showing something the way he had shown, I think. So I want to explore about reconnection. If I don't have any good friend or any good person, I don't find any person. So why should I go and what is that thing? And I have a breath. I know I have my breath and there is a spirit. So there is a space of reconnection. So how to go about that? That's why my question is. I hope Gustav can also give some light on this. Thank you, Gustav.
Thank you so much for your comment. I mentioned in my presentation that I sometimes spend the nights in the church suicide helpline service, and to that helpline, many people contact us, and they are experiencing hopelessness. I sometimes ask if there is a friend, if there is anyone that they can share with, talk with, and many of them says no, there is no one. So that's what I had in the back of my mind when I said something about that in my presentation. I know that it's very, very difficult in some situations for some people. And when we meet in the suicide helpline, it's helpful for me to be empty, first of all, to be empty-handed, not to come with solutions or fixed ideas of how this person should go about the situation. I need to be empty-handed to receive the honest sharing of that person, and to maintain a kind of a not knowing. Sometimes I think in my work that not knowing is the most is my most important resource. So being empty-handed and not knowing, and exploring together what could be helpful for that person. I try to encourage people to reach out. And there are these two levels, I think. There is one kind of existential level, which can be addressed through these practices of looking at the sky to experience awe, beauty, wonder, to connect with Ruach Elohim, if you like, or the God, or the foundation, the ground of being. That's perhaps an existential perspective, but then also I know for myself that I need my friends, my colleagues, to share what I carry. So these both things are like, I guess, the two wings of a bird. I think both wings are needed, but it's not so easy to give a general answer. I feel I need to explore together with the person that I meet or talk with in counseling or in the suicide helpline. I hope I understood your question somewhat correctly. Thank you.
Thank you, Darshan and Gustav. Sauradeep, you've got the permission to unmute. Sauradeep, can you hear us?
Hello,
Yes, Sauradeep.
am I audible?
Yes.
Ma'am, please wait for some 2 seconds. Let me. Am I audible, ma'am?
Yes, Sauradeep.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, Sauradeep, kindly ask, would you like to share your question or comment?
Ma'am, I'd like to express myself. First of all, I'm extremely thankful to the ARTH for organizing this wonderful webinar and talking to the spirituality, which is extremely beneficial. And I was listening to all of the speakers. They were excellent, and I really thankful to all of them, as I learned a lot from them. And particularly in this pandemic situation where people are losing all their hope, people are losing the hope for a bright future for their goal of life. In this pandemic situation, if people can really get mental strength, or they are associated with some spiritual practices, may it be any religion, this can be a point of their mental satisfaction. And I will give a small reference. I will give a small reference to Bhagavad Gita. Hello. Hello, am I audible, ma'am?
Please,
Because
yes, please go ahead. Yes, we can hear you.
okay. So in Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna says to Arjuna that in Gita there are mainly 4 phases, but the main phase is the bhakti phase, which speaks of devotion to the God. And regarding Gita, it is applicable to all of the religion, because ultimately the Lord is same. For me, he is Krishna. For a Christian, he is Jesus. He is only Buddha. Means the eternal, the Lord is the same. As I was seeing that the one Raghunath, as the Sikh song represented that. So really wonderful events. So speaking of the spiritual practices, it can give us, provide with mental strength, freshness, with a new motivation to start and to deal our new lives in a new way, where if we study all the texts thoroughly, actually Lord Krishna, Lord Buddha, Guru Nanak Dev Ji, Lord Buddha, and all Lord Jesus Christ speak the same thing. That is to speak love, to serve people in a better way, and to establish peace, integrity, and harmony in the world, which is very crucial in this era, because opening the newspapers and TV channels, unfortunately, the world is in a disturbance. But I'm sure that if we are associated with the spiritual practices, be it be any religion, then definitely we can overcome this situation. And my personal request to the Deer Park Foundation is to arrange frequent webinars like this, where people from all religion speaker, I was listening, they were really wonderful, so that all religions are united. And the main focus is on peace through the way of spirituality, where the world in the world peace, harmony, and integrity is established. Like I will speak the reference of Sri Ramakrishna Paramhamsa and Swami Vivekananda, who traveled to USA, and in the year of 1893, in the World Religious Parliament, he was given the question to speak on Hinduism, and he was asked to criticize Buddhism and other religions. And he gave one answer, that there is nothing for criticize, because in Bengali there is a proverb that Jotomat Totopat, which in English means, as there are many paths, there are many way to deal with the religions, which is actually unified. Literally, it means that in suppose a river is there, there will be many banks, but the unity is, the main thing is that all people will get together for collecting water. A Hindu will call it pani, a Christian will call it water. So like this one. So I will conclude myself by chanting a small verse from Bhagavad Gita. Yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata abhyuthanam adharmasya tadatmanam srijamyaham paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya chatuskritam dharma sansthapanarthaya sambhavami yuge yuge. Hare Krishna. So with the blessings of Lord Krishna, Lord
Sorry, Deep, we lost you. But thank you very much, Sardeep. First of all, just nice to have somebody who's so well read, and really for representing these values of recognizing all that the traditions bring to us. Thank you for sharing that. Coach Renew has a question.
Okay. Yeah, likewise, thank you so much to all the speakers. My question will be directed towards Avneet. I really enjoyed the 3 ways that you explained. I just wanted to understand from the perspective where you said that life unfolds in acceptance, connecting with the temporariness of life. What I have seen and noticed in many people is the distress goes during illness or some kind of crisis is the fear of ceasing to exist. The fear of temporariness is what they're scared of. So how do you bring people to the space of acceptance of temporariness of life, and how do you go about doing that? That will be very interesting if you can elaborate on that.
Thank you, Coach, for reminding us that nearly all our fears, whatever fear we're dealing with, is fear of the end, is fear of death, whether it's death of physicality or it's death of ego. So you see many times when we have fear of what people will think about me, my image, likes on Insta, and that's fear of ego, isn't it? And that's fear of ego being lost, this whole construct of myself. And a crisis situation actually is bringing us to this reality. I think most of us live our lives believing, we see this temporariness all around, but we believe somewhere, yes, the world is temporary, but not me, not what's mine, not what belongs to me. This is going to stay forever. And we also somewhere have been conditioned to believe that my happiness, the joy, the anand is in holding on to all these things I carry, not realizing, which is why that wisdom piece, which said that sukh is actually causing suffering. So it is only in adversity when you start to notice these things a little more clearly, because you turn inwards and sit and see that how every time I rested my sense of joy and pleasure in something which was outside of me, which was external, while I thought having this now will make me happier, actually, even if I received it, say, if I was to get it in my life, I still could never enjoy it fully, because even when I had it, I'd be in deep fear of losing it someday. So whilst I am chasing all these dreams and hoping I will feel happier and fulfilled one day, it wasn't working out. It wasn't giving me that sense of satisfaction and peace. And rather, it was creating a lot of unrest. And sometimes those situations of pause make you see these things, these dances of life, slightly more clearly. But also, I feel that when you have to face it, so if I could think about a very personal space where I've witnessed a crisis, which is losing somebody very, very dear to me, an integral part of my being, losing them physically, it wasn't the most easy part of my life to deal with. And I think thinking about it a few years before they passed away, I wouldn't be able to imagine life without this person and their physical presence. But in that state of crisis, I think, and I felt so much at loss from the outside world, I think somewhere turning inwards, because that was the only space I could go to. I couldn't go back to my close family members because they were in distress at that time. They were suffering, and you didn't want to create more suffering with them. But I think because at that time, when I entered a space which I had not touched and explored earlier, I found this support which was there, which was available, which was accessible. And it was amazing that while there was a sense of loss, but there was also this sense of joy in celebrating the life that I was able to share with this person and the kind of love I was able to share with this person, but then also dwell into, oh, this new dimension within me available, the Ek Raghunath, the one consciousness, which was there for my support. And I think without that crisis, I'm not sure how much longer it would have taken me to tap onto that dimension which was available. And maybe it was always there, but I couldn't see it. I couldn't experience it. But only in that time of deep crisis, it just opened up. And then you realize it's just with you always. And yet people, and all of us, will continue to struggle with this sense of impermanence, and we still want to hold on. But I think each crisis after crisis somehow makes you accept it makes you surrender. When you can't change what is not changeable, then all you're left with is to accept and to surrender. And you touch that dimension. When your mind and all your wisdom and all your skill set has failed to change what you want to so hold on to, then that moment of surrender comes. And that surrender, I think, is what is a surrender to the Atman, is surrender to the divine, to the one, to that one who comes. I think you touch that dimension is how I experienced it. I wonder.
Thank you, Coach, and thank you, Avneet. Since there seem to be no other hands raised, and also given that we've a minute past our scheduled time, I just really want to take a moment to say thank you for all the participants for being here, because one is the intention with which we set off, but two is really, it becomes an enriching space because it is shared. And of course, immense gratitude to all of the speakers and Deer Park and the organizers, and of course, Rinpoche. We could just take a moment to dedicate merit before I hand over to Prashant. So just come back to your breath, and we make the wish that may all beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they have happiness that knows no suffering. May they dwell in equanimity, free from anger and attachment towards those near and far. Thank you very much. Prashant, over back to you.
Hello. Thank you, Nivedita. Thank you to all the participants for expressing also your inspiring words of gratitude in the chat box. Just firstly, I think Avneet, Gustav, Elaine, and Asha, I think your sharing to me was just felt so authentic and real. Of course, there is the conceptual framework of all the traditions which you all are exposed to and trained in, and we all as participants and audience members have our own references. But I think just this authenticity and honesty just cuts across. And I think that has been so touching and grounding even for me. So really appreciate. And also for all of you participants, I mean, for all of us actually as all participants or co-creators in this gathering, that, I think maybe certainly carry this energy of reflection, renewal, and, as we move ahead from this meeting to other spaces, I think maybe just, carry the spirit forward, because I think we all have, big responsibilities for these times. Yeah. So thank you again. Thank you so much. And again, really grateful to the speakers and also the effort they put in for the last 3-4 weeks to nurture this. And I hope we can continue with this spirit. And thank you all. There will be a recording, I think maybe in a few days. And if we need to edit it or improve the quality of the audio, we will work on that and we'll put it up on the Deer Park Institute YouTube channel. Thank you all.